Hello. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another live broadcast with Project Control Academy. We are very glad to have you joining us in this session. It's going to be a session packed with insightful strategies and information that perhaps you didn't know much about before. So, today we are going to talk about a very important topic going beyond metrics for driving project controls excellence. As you know, in project controls, we highly focus on metrics and qualitative measures like project performance metrics, KPIs, anything related to project cost, schedule, risk, and you name it, anything tangible with data analytics, with project data. We in project controls are so good at it. And we are very good in analyzing the data, understanding the project issues, and assisting the project management team with ensuring the project is successful completion and making sure that the project performance is on track. But my question to everyone who's joining is that enough to just focus on metrics in project controls for driving project controls excellence in our projects? What do you think? Please type in the chat. I would like to know your opinion about that topic because that's what we are going to get deep dive into today. So again, please use the chat to answer these questions so we can also get your engagement throughout the conversation. Let me see if the things are coming. Again, I'm a bit ahead of you, so it takes some time until I see your chat, but I'm looking forward to knowing your answer. Again, the question is that enough to just focus on metrics in project controls? And if not, what other factors do you recommend considering for leading the project to a successful completion? What do you think? What other factors beyond measuring the project performance, progress, schedule, and everything that we measure in project controls, what else are important? So the reality is, yes, we have to go beyond metrics. Just measuring the metrics and understanding where we are in our project in terms of cost, schedule, and also risks involved is not enough. There are some qualitative components in our projects that are often ignored or perhaps not included in the contract. So we are left with mainly the quantitative measures in project controls that are defined by the project teams. So that's why we have this master class today to shed more light on other important components in a project to drive excellence in project controls, not just the metrics. There are some qualitative components like project systems, processes, procedures, and all other things that you barely see those in the contract specifications. But the question is how we can incorporate them into our contract, how we can make sure that we adopt to those standards and to those systems and processes and follow those throughout our project, how we can make sure that we can drive excellence in our project controls beyond the metrics. So that's what we are going to cover in today's live broadcast, and it's going to be a very insightful session. So for those of you who are joining, stay tuned until the end because we have a very special guest who is going to shed more light on this topic. So, before I dive into the topic and introduce my fantastic guest speaker, I would like to invite everyone who's joining us live to go ahead in the chat, introduce yourself, tell us who you are, from which country you are tuning in, and what you're looking to learn in today's live broadcast. And while you're typing in, let me introduce myself. I am Shore Qurbani, the founder and technical director of Project Control Academy, the leading global provider of training programs and resources in project controls. Now I see, yeah, the engagement started. So welcome to this live broadcast. I see Bo joining us from KSA. Very good, glad to see you. And he's commenting on plans, policies, procedures, and people, technology. Yes, exactly. Daniel is also joining us. Welcome, Daniel. So he's saying that, let me just highlight the comments here. So it's not, but many DOE labs think so. Nuclear sites are different. Okay, we can cover that too. So we also have Sajjad joining us. So glad to have you here. So again, please have this conversation engaging. So please have your questions coming as we are going through the conversation, because these sessions are meant for you to add value to you and get direct guidance from the experts in the industry. So please engage in the conversation. And also, I ask everyone a quick favor. If you are here joining us live, would you mind clicking on repost and post this live broadcast on your feed so others in your network can also join and benefit from this great discussion that we have today? I really appreciate it. Okay, I also see someone else is joining us, Associate Planning Director from United Kingdom, Jazar. Welcome. Very glad to have you joining us here. I also see John from United States joining us. And what are some ways to convert qualitative data to quantitative data? Very good. That's what we are going to cover today. So stay tuned. Very glad to have you all joining us. Thank you again. Please have the engagement going and ask your questions, and very glad to have you joining us here in this live broadcast. So without any further ado, let me have a quick introduction of my fantastic guest speaker, and then we get dive into the discussion. My guest speaker for today is a passionate project professional who is deeply involved in the large and complex infrastructure projects with over 14 years of experience, primarily in the field of project planning and project controls. He also is one of the leaders in AEC International as the regional leader for the Europe and Africa. So I make this introduction quite brief because I want my guest speaker to give us more information about himself. So please help me give a big warm welcome to Joel Diaz for joining us today and opening up this important topic for us. Welcome, Joel, and thank you for joining us in today's session.
No, it's a pleasure being here, and I really appreciate the invitation.
Thank you, Joel. With that, I had a very, very brief introduction of you. Would you mind telling us a little bit more about yourself, your background, and also the countries that you've visited? I know you've been working all over the world, so if you can shed more light on your experience and before we dive into the details, I appreciate it.
Thank you, Shori. No, it's as I mentioned, it's a pleasure being here. I'm actually originally from Portugal, currently based in the UK in Birmingham. Somehow I'm a civil engineer by degree. As Shori mentioned, 14, 15 years of experience, mainly for tier one contractors at pre-con, construction, execution stage. So throughout the project life cycle, I've been in heavy tenders, in large tenders to Africa. Been also in Trinidad and Tobago, Costa Rica, Netherlands, Denmark, Finland, Lithuania, UK. So somehow it gave me the opportunity to review contracts, to review particular conditions, FIDIC, JCT, NEC 3 and 4. And I think that's somehow started to create a pattern and a trend on the lack of the qualitative components, which we will be somehow covering here today. Also, as Shori mentioned, I'm a director for AEC International Region 9, which covers Europe and Africa. Actually started, I became aware of AEC International during the project in the Caribbean, where I met actually Aldo Matos, which at the time, I believe 10 years ago, he was the president of AEC Brazil section. And somehow it all started from that moment with Aldo, where I became curious. I joined the ACE, became a volunteering, and in 2022 ran for the elections. I ended up winning the elections, and somehow spreading the knowledge has been a great challenge and a great pleasure, especially in covering so many countries in Europe and Africa, so many languages and cultures. listening to the different project controls people, having great conversations, and in the end, obviously trying to avoid that every single one of us trying to reinvent the wheel. So the practices are there, not only AACE, you can find PMI, APM, AQST, and the list goes on. But I'm really a big AACE, obviously, because construction and energy field are a relevant part of the recommended practices, and that covers pretty much our scope. So yeah, as I mentioned, having the opportunity to review so many contracts end up somehow pointing out this lack of qualitative elements. And obviously now, as recently I'm studying, I'm doing a master's in data science in part-time. That allowed me basically to start as well doing some paper review and understanding the AI component in construction. And somehow, and funny enough, pretty much all the literature review, all the papers around AI in construction, they tend to agree that there is a gap, and the gap is on the data structure. And here we are not talking about qualitative, quantitative data. I'm not going into that details, but the data is missing. There is no structure. There is problems in data and the way that is captured, the way that is treated. The systems are still the same systems as 10 years ago, 20 years ago, with particular exceptions. But is one of the big points that everyone points out. The data is not there, or if it is, it's in isolation, and therefore it's hard to treat and really to use AI in construction. So yeah, I'm glad to be here. It's great to be here with you guys, Project Control Academy, and Shori, really thank you for the invitation, and I'm excited.
Thank you so much, Joel. It's really an honor to have you. I didn't know about your background also being in data analytics, and now talking about another aspect that's important in our project. You are not talking about data analytics, going deep dive into metrics. You are kind of switching the gear and talking about some qualitative, ignoring components. So thank you so much. Hearing that from someone who is already behind data analytics and know the ins and outs is really a pleasure. So thank you for shedding more light on that. And honestly, I didn't know Aldo was your inspiration behind becoming a
Yes.
regional director. Shout out to Aldo.
Actually, the reason why I'm here and the reason why we met as well in Chicago,
Yeah.
it's because of Aldo. It all started in 2013 when I met him in Trinidad and Tobago in a multi-million project. I think the largest project in the Caribbean back then. Uh, and he mentioned AAC International, and I was not aware, obviously, coming from Portugal, where project controls discipline is non-existent, pretty much. And having Aldo as a mentor and pushing forward really inspired me to move up all the way up until the Region 9 leadership, which is a great honor and pleasure. Yeah.
But that's amazing that you just started not long ago and going all the way up the ladder in AAC leadership. So congratulations, Joel. So, and
Thank
thanks
you.
for sharing about your experience. Again, very glad to have you here. So let's get into the details. But before I dive into the details for today's discussion, you mentioned you touched on a very important point about AI, and now many people are talking about AI, and we have hot topics anytime we talk about AI in project controls. Like it's always a hot topic. People want to understand more about it. But what are some of the challenges that project controls professionals are facing right now? Is it adoption to AI? Is it communications that's still missing? Is it contractual issues? What are your thoughts in terms of the biggest challenges that at the moment project controls professionals are facing? If you shed more light on that, and then we get into the details of really going beyond the metrics and what we can do.
No, definitely. I mean, Obviously, my background is heavily in construction, tier one contractors. Therefore, some of you might be from oil and gas, energy related, different background. The things might be slightly different. But I think the problems are a little bit related to everything, right? It's what I have been finding a lot is the personal agenda, and that personal agenda that might fix a immediate problem on a project does not really add any value on the long run on the organization level. So I think that is a huge problem. And then obviously construction, low productivity, bureaucracy, low margins does not really allow for larger transformation and investment. So that obviously uh, ends up impacting the project controls discipline, especially in my view, planning and scheduling, where I'm coming from heavily. You end up obviously having low budget, sharing the planners across different projects, going on high level instead of going into detail, going in isolation, having your standalone, not having your works program or time schedule in the cloud. So it all affects the discipline and what we do. That's my view. Obviously, then you have another layer, which is the silos. We all, I would assume, we all work in this world, in this reality. So the silos are there. You keep obviously having the planning team working with a specific tool, not talking on a regular basis with the rest of the members. You have the quantity surveyors doing their own thing without really caring on the overall outcome of the project. Then you have the 4D planning, another layer, the designer preparing the 3D model, sending the latest version last minute does not allow you to really assess and really use the model to, for example, clash avoidance, coordination. So it all adds up. And somehow you mentioned the metrics, sure, in the beginning, but somehow that metric or the metrics end up being isolated, and therefore it's hard to trust, at least on my view, unless you really verify all the flow from the beginning till the end. It's really hard to trust. And obviously, for me, a big part of the problems are caused, and it's a result of the so-called lack of qualitative components in the contract. I think for me, again, reviewing several contracts for major mega construction projects, it's really hard to read that the client or the owner asks for a CV of a construction manager with 20 years of experience to be attached to the tender, with the proposal, and does not ask for any CV for a planning engineer or for a quantity surveyor or for a BIM coordinator. So it's really hard to see that. And then the other components, there is no processes. Even if the client asks for a program to be submitted every month, it's the program, is the file in isolation. Why the file in isolation? Why not integrating the ERP system with the program, the cost system with the program? Why again the 3D model with the program? Why there is no willingness, clarity around these components? And again, the contractors, due to the low margins, due to sometimes the lack of looking forward more than 2 years, 3 years, end up being focused on the project delivery and forgetting that long run, and what can bring benefit to the business. So somehow that affects the project controls. Somehow and I think it's easy to understand with the huge amount of projects being delayed, and running over cost without actually understanding what are the reasons for delay, because there is no processes to implement the impacts. There is only a claim that appears out of nowhere after 6 months or after 3 months, or every 6 months, and then people get lost on the information, get lost, and actually lose trust in the project controls profession. Obviously, and talking a little bit on the AI component, I think it's clear. Working in silos without any structure, without a business strategy around the project controls discipline, I think it's still valuable, but it is limited, the benefit that you get. And obviously, a big part of AI at the moment is talking. It's around the commercial and the contracts, obviously, because you have extensive, lengthy contracts and letters, and you have plenty of data, maybe in the contractual system, but there is still a huge amount of part of the analysis that needs to be done with the scheduling metrics, with the cost metrics, and maybe project by project is possible, but on the business level, it's literally it's not there. So I think some of the main challenges, in my view, will still be here, and will be still here for the next decade, unless the owners and developers, and actually, when I mention owners, we sitting at the contractor, we are actually an owner for the subcontractors. So we also have our obligation to write the qualitative components in a way that we are actually guiding the subcontractors to give us not just a program in the end of the month, not just the time schedule in the end of the month, but to give us in a way that we can integrate with our program, with our cost system, with our ERP. So we need to mandate, and we need to attach that. Obviously, if you are a subcontractor or a contractor, you are pricing the quantitative part. If the owner does not ask anything else, why should I actually price a full team of planners, cost engineers to be on site to help delivering the job? No, as a contractor, I would not price that. And I think we keep going in circles, and somehow we are unable to detach ourselves from this, again, lack of clarity, lack of requirements, and it keeps going, with probably the personal agendas in between, which somehow keep bring some light, some different views, some tools, some systems, but in isolation. And you can see that everywhere. Obviously, I hope I'm not alone, but I've been seeing this everywhere, every single site, especially now as a consultant, 20 projects at the same time for the largest construction businesses around Europe. It's everywhere. So you get the KPI, but is isolated. It's not talking with the cost, it's not talking with the submittals, it's not talk with IPC from the subcontractors. You are just looking into a number that you don't know if you can actually trust it, because all of your supply chain is not integrated, as an example. So yeah, it's a shame, and I think we will not really exit. It will not be AI solving this. I think the owners have a huge responsibility, and obviously the contractors as well. So, and again, I think when you compare this with automotive industry, where you have R&D departments, where you have actually they invest in new technology in development, you look to contractors, where construction, where is this investment? Yeah, you have the startups popping out, but where is this investment in systems, in tools, in new technology? Where is it? On a big scale, it's minimal. Obviously, you have contractors pushing for that, but very slow. So yeah, I think we have a lot of problems. We need to remain positive. AI will not solve anything on its own, and we need actually to create the conditions for actually extract the benefit from the AI, and the conditions, they need to start somewhere. Again, qualitative components, in my view.
Very well said, Joel. So I really resonated with every challenge that you mentioned. I would like to ask the audience which of those challenges that Joel mentioned also resonated with you as well. Please type in the chat, because I believe we all have faced one or many or all of them at some point in our projects. Just to wrap up what you said, Joel. So Joel mentioned about mainly the silos between systems. Even I would like to add between our teams, even between planning, scheduling team, and even cost control team, there is a silo. Like each group are doing their own thing separately. Also, Joel mentioned about the lack of qualitative components in our projects, which we are going to get into more details in today's session, and also the process isolation. So a lot of things are in isolation. So no matter where we are with AI and adoption of digital technology, so if we cannot fix those fundamentals and basics in our projects, we cannot move ahead. So again, please share in the chat your thoughts on these challenges, and if there is anything else that you would like to add to the list, that would be great. But very great list, Joel. And now going back to what you said in regards to one of the main ones that you mentioned on the qualitative components that are often ignored. And you mentioned we have to attach them to a contract or something. Can you shed more light on how we can really incorporate how we do our processes, systems, and kind of merging everything together in a program as part of a contract? Is that the solution, to have it as part of the contract, to not sidetrack of kind of lose track of those qualitative components, meaning processes, procedures, systems, and tools? If you can shed more lights on the solution, because we all agree on the challenges that you have addressed, Joel, but what we can do about it, and what has been ignored in projects that we can do at least as a first step. I know AI is still years ahead. I mean, many companies are adopting it, but I'm not talking about AI or data. Let's go back to the basics and go beyond the metrics and see what we can do, no matter where we are, from which country our community is tuning in. What would be the first step we can do to not lose track of those important components in a project for project controls excellence?
Yes. So I think, again, I would definitely argue that for me, definitely we should attach what we want from the project controls team. We should attach it to the contract, to the request for quotation, whatever is the file. You need to include that. It needs to be priced accordingly. So that's my view, and I believe this is the only way to impact the industry immediately. Obviously, you might ask, what is the qualitative, or what are the qualitative components? What is this? So, for me, it all starts in the project execution plan or the project control plan. And by project control plan, AAC, in this case, they have several RPs. One of the RPs, which is the 60R10, defines the project control plan as the qualitative representation of the project control process. So the qualitative representation of the process. And also the project control plan is actually the tool to deliver your qualitative components. And this needs to be written. This needs to be draft upfront. As an organization, at business level, obviously as well, matching with the project requirements and what you want to see from the project. So this needs to be connected, and it takes time. Obviously, this is not an easy task. It's not a one day task that you sit and you draft it in isolation. It's an exercise. It's a business exercise, especially if you are a construction company. involve everyone. You need to actually understand what's your vision, what's your goal, what do you want to see from sites. If you have been there, contractors, again, we all know that the topic around earthworks, excavation, filling, productivities, cubic meters, and so on. So what do you want to see on your KPIs? And how are you going to collect that? Or how do you expect the contractor to collect that, treat the data, and give it to you? How do you expect this to happen? You need to have a procedure. You need to suggest systems, if not imposing or providing the contractors with the systems or the supply chain with the systems. You can suggest this system or similar, and by systems tools together, and you need to write that down. You cannot expect that again the contractor is going to provide you with a satellite imagery every week if it's not written in the contract. But you actually need that if you are working on a mega project in a very large area. You are not going to fly the drone to monitor your progress. You might want, again, a satellite imagery collection to get the progress faster at a much more competitive price and integrated with your GIS system. But again, where is this written? And you as a client or owner, or even if you sit at the contractor, you need to understand, what do you need from the subcontractors? What's the expectation of my client? And again, this, in my view, it needs really to be defined. Again, the RP60 R10 gives you some thoughts, some lines on how to start, what you should cover. Again, from the cost system, accounting, scheduling, risk, even site diaries. What should you collect from site diaries? Which data is relevant? How is that lined up with your WBS, your OBS, CBS? And how are you going to receive that data in the end of the day and those KPIs? How do you store that in a data warehouse? So this is written and it's available at AAC RP recommended practices and on the virtual library as well. So you don't need to reinvent the wheel. What you need to do is take the next step, start including it in the contract. Again, I truly believe it's the only way. The only way. And again, here I'm talking as a contractor, as a construction person that has been there on site for years in multiple sites, multiple countries, from minus 30 degrees to plus 40. I've been there. And it's painful to see some of the projects are public infrastructure projects. We are the taxpayers, actually. So it's our money. We need to do something about it. It cannot stay in the same way. So definitely particular conditions. Again, you don't need to be an expert in contracts. You don't need to be a lawyer. Particular conditions are there to have content. So create the content and request that. That's I would argue it's probably the only way to really impact the industry straight away. Again, not on the project, not isolated. Need to see the big picture, what the business wants. The same for the contractor, the same for the client side. What do I want to see? Is it the cubic meter per hour relevant to me, or I'm more interested just on cash, on payments? What do I want to see as a KPI? Do I actually want to use this data to start using AI or adopting AI in the long run? So if I do, I need to start now. I need to ask my supply chain to provide me with data. So yeah, the only way I truly believe, unfortunately, is to include that in the contracts. And I think it's fair, because you as a contractor, subcontractor, you price what you read, you price for what you see. You are not pricing, otherwise you are not competitive. So it needs to be clear, and it needs to be there at tender stage. It can also not happen during the execution, but obviously the benefits will be much less. So it's as early as possible.
Okay, that's great, Joel. I'm glad that you're bringing the importance of including the project control plan as part of the contract. So not just writing that up, but also attach it as part of the contract. Before I have some questions about that, but before going more detail into that, because I'm not sure. First of all, a question for the audience. How many of you know what project control plan is or have ever developed one? If you know or did, please type in the chat and your definition of project control plan. We want to get a feeling of how many of you have actually developed that plan for your projects. But for the benefit of everyone, before we get into more details, Joel, can you share more information about what would be kind of the major components of a project control plan? What do you expect to see in a project control plan so that everyone is clear what that plan is all about, and then we can go into more details on why you recommend having it as part of the contract.
So, I mean, you have several components, right? It's not limited to the scheduling requirements, as I mentioned. From risk to schedule, reporting, cost, project management, resource planning, procurement, and the list goes on. Value engineering. If you have a change in the scope, how do you treat the change? Cost, time, obviously quantities that are coming from the change. How do you impact the program? Do you run a QS array straight away after? How do you treat the data? Do you need to seek approval? You don't or don't. So it's a range. It's a huge range of items that you need to cover. Again, and actually, funny enough, the project controls plan, and I think sure you have a YouTube video around project controls plan among the obviously the huge library that you have on YouTube. Yeah, you are not limited to one component. You need to understand what you want as a business. Again, the RPs are there to help you as a first starting point. And you need to understand what's important for you. Obviously, as a business, I believe it's hard to transform immediately and to start requiring everything, unless you have unlimited budget for that. But start step by step. That would be my suggestion. Start with the scheduling requirements, cost. Start connecting that. If you have an ERP at business level, start understanding how do you connect ERP to your scheduling system, to the cost control system. How do you bring the things in? Obviously, the ERP can be the cost control system itself, but how do you connect both? If you go a layer down, okay, which codes do I need to have in the program in order to source that information, in order to extract that? So you need to understand that, and you need to draft that. Again, don't reinvent the wheel. There are guidance that helps you to start and to kick off. But it's all about what you want to have, what is relevant for you. Obviously, if you go to an energy company, a wind manufacturing EPC contractor, they want to understand the installation or the time that the cranes are on site installing or not installing. So that's a big price. So you want to understand that hour by hour, minute by minute installation process of your turbines. If you are a contractor, maybe you are interested on the excavation rates. So how do you collect that? What's the system from that crane or from the excavator to your desk? And then how do you obviously extrapolate that from the different portfolio? How do you start to see the KPIs? How is this affecting your cost, your tenders? Are you going to use this for the next tenders? Are you benchmarking it? So again, and you not just as a contractor, once again, you as a client, as an owner, or you if you are at the contractors team and you are an owner or you are the client for the subcontractors. Draft that, start small. maybe then deploy that across the portfolio. And obviously, you as a client, maybe start small as well, so go project by project, adjust it organically. But yeah, you need experts as well to develop that, as I mentioned. I do believe, obviously, if you go with the flow without expertise, it might take you several years. There are people out there writing this from scratch, talking with the business, understanding which component is the relevant, which KPIs, how do you want to structure the systems for scheduling, for cost, for risk. And by doing this exercise, you come with workflows between the disciplines. So there are professionals out there that develop that. I've been developing that for not several, but few businesses, and deploying that actually on site, mandating the subcontractors to use that. Otherwise, I would not pay. So actually, there are a few tricks that could be used to mandate implementation, such as not paying, at least not paying the full IPC in the end of the month, withhold some payments or some part of the payment. So yeah, I will put it in that way.
Fantastic. And we already put a link for everyone if you are interested in learning more about project control plan components. We have a dedicated training and blog post for that. You see the link there. Cameron posted that. So you can go check that out. And we have also several training videos on project control plan, what it is, the components, and how to have a successful implementation of project control plan. There are 3 series of video training, as Joel mentioned. So check those out if you're interested. We won't go any further into the components of project controls plan, but basically in a nutshell is how you're going to do things, how you're going to do your project plan scheduling, how you're going to manage risk, how you're going to do your cost, how you're going to manage contingency. All the hows and the systems, without any going to the details, are captured in project control plan. Is that right? Or in just one sentence, is that what is covered in project control plan, right?
And again, it's also creating expectations, right? Because for you, project controls function and what you expect from project controls might be different depending on your region, depending on obviously the way that you have been delivering projects during the years. One example is I think I mentioned that when I met you, Shori, in Chicago, that I was using your YouTube video about project controls discipline to educate a company. I was sharing, please see the video, because for me, I knew what was project controls. However, the company didn't have any processes, so people would not understand where the function sits, what are the components, what are they treating, what they are solving, right? So I was again, if we had a project controls plan, I would be probably sharing that. As I didn't have anything at that time, I was just in the beginning of implementing a full project controls department. I was sharing the video to educate my peers and the team, from human resources to the finance department. This is project controls. So yeah.
That's awesome. Thank you. I didn't know that. Yeah, I remember you
So
told me about it, but thank you. I appreciate it, Joel.
it's not only Aldomatos that impact lives, but you also have been
Oh,
impacting
it's such,
lives.
thank you. It's just amazing. Thank you for your comment. I appreciate that. But now going back to project control plan, there's a question here, which is a valid question. And every time there is a discussion about project control plan, this question comes up. Let me highlight that. So the question is it the same as project execution plan, PEP, or is it something different?
Yeah, I also get this question all the time, and I think it all starts with obviously the different professional bodies, PMI, APM, AAC, ACOST. Everyone calls the things differently. For me, project controls plan or project control plan should be part of the project execution plan. You also don't need to have the file called PCP or project control plan as such. You could have a schedule management plan, risk management plan, cost management plan, independent files, independent content and processes, part of the PEP, project execution plan. So that's pretty much it. So they are not the same thing. Project control plan, I will put it inside of the PEP. Because it covers the components that the PEP should cover as well at certain extent. Maybe the PEP obviously needs to cover more components.
Yes, definitely. It's usually a section as part of the PEP, Project Execution Plan, PCP. But yes, I totally agree with you, Joel. So now let's go back to the important point you mentioned that you recommended PCP or Project Control Plan to be part of the contract. I haven't seen that before. Usually, how we have been doing PCP was at the beginning of the project. As we were developing the project plan, we also documented our assumptions, our processes, procedures as part of PCP, and then it was part of the PEP. So, but now even you are saying that even before getting started, like as part of the contract, have that on. So, can you shed more light on that and how it can be done? To what level of detail you go into the contract? Because also we have a very good question. I'm going to bring that up regarding the contract details, but are you putting the whole PCP as an appendix to the contract, or you are just kind of highlighting some information from that? If you just give us more information on how you have done it and why it's effective, I appreciate it.
No, that's a good question. And I mean, in my view, I would argue that you need to include everything straight away in the contract or again at the tender stage, and you need to be specific. Otherwise, we keep in the same cycle. We don't know what to expect from the PCP or from the PEP, and therefore we didn't price our team in the right way. We didn't actually structure our team at tender stage in the right way. But that obviously depends on the form of the contract, right? If you are an alliance, maybe you can start later. You can define the project controls plan as you go, and you adjust the team as you go. But that's not very common in construction projects, and therefore, in my view, it's also not common to have the PCP upfront. But I think that is the reason why contractors do not price the things properly. That's the reason why contractors start with Microsoft project and then PCP comes with P6, or the client has P6, and then in the middle you need to start wasting your time converting the files, checking if everything is fine, resubmitting it, and you go in circles. That's why you start having your site diaries in Word format or in Excel format, isolated, saved in SharePoint somewhere, no one can find it. If you define that, and obviously going now into the detail of what should be there, if you define that, if you actually provide your supply chain with the exact tool for site diaries, this is the platform that you need to come in every day and fill it for me because I need this data. If you actually have the right resource libraries, materials libraries, equipment, the activity IDs, the activity descriptions, and you just select that directly in the site diaries, you are already generating a huge amount of content and data that you can use on a daily basis. And again, the only way, because this requires time of the team, but the only way to be clear is to have as early as possible to allow contractors, subcontractors to price accordingly. Again, if I the example of having a satellite imagery every week for large sites. If I need that, it should be there. It should be part of your monitoring process. How often do you want to see? What's the type? I actually want that in my GIS because I want to open the GIS. I want to have the KPIs from the schedule directly in GIS, but I want to have as well the satellite picture straight away in GIS. How, as a contractor, I mean, I'm having my team spending time. I need to hire now a GIS expert to build that to the owner because it was not defined on the PCP or it was not included at early stages. Therefore, we don't do it. And that's, again, that's the cycle that we need to break. And I think I've been having these discussions, obviously, with peers, with colleagues, with friends in project controls, planning and scheduling, QSs, commercial, and somehow there is an agreement. I think, and again, I could argue that yeah, it should be there as soon as possible. Ideally, during the quotation. I don't know if actually should be a bill of quantities item and you should put the price against that. Maybe it's a solution, but we need to do something. We cannot really, I mean, you cannot really go to these mega projects. I could use the example of several EU funded projects, 5 billion, 6 billion, 7 billion, where the contractor comes with one planner or one planning engineer to deliver a package of 3, 4, 5 billion. What do you expect from the project controls team? You have one cost controller doing the cost control in Excel because there is no requirements. So yeah, that's painful to see. And again, for me, the only way is as early as possible. If you have already definition, you don't need actually the scope of the project to have already some definition what you want to see. The same way that you define that you want a submission of the program of time schedule every month or every 30 days, you can define the rest. You can actually, as I see it going and moving forward, if I was an owner, I would actually set up, for example, a cloud with Primavera P6 on the cloud, and I will say, Mr. Contractor, you use my system. I want the information live here. And this is my condition. If you sign the contract, you need to use it, right? So this type of things will only change, will only happen. Again, in my view, I would argue that they will only happen if they are in the contract requirements. And again, I think every one of us has been hearing when you talk with your PD, your project director, project manager, why do you want to do this? It's not in the contract. Why do you want me to now do 4D planning? It's not in the contract. I think everyone already has been in this situation. Okay, you want to implement a new site diary platform that conveys all the information, logistics, issues, blockers. Why? It's not in the contract. Let's keep doing it in Excel or in Microsoft Word. So it's this type of problems and issues that we are facing. And for me, the only way that I see could be, or one of the ways is, it's to include it as soon as possible.
Yes, I fully agree with you. And I remember in one of the good projects I was in, the owner, we were the contractor, was really good in specifying the requirements for project controls, like in terms of a project control plan. That was, I don't remember it was part of the contract, but I remember before we started the project, we knew what the owner needed to see, let's say in our schedule, the reporting cycle, the way that he wanted us to see in terms of the level of detail, all the things that we needed to know, that was provided to us. And I believe for an owner company, it's really essential to define those requirements so your contractors know exactly what you need and they can submit those information to you. So my question is for the contractors. So we were talking about contracts. So for the contractors, do you recommend having the PCP as part of their proposal submission, like even before getting the work started? Is that how you recommend that for contractors too?
I will definitely draft that as soon as possible. Again, the ideal scenario is you don't draft that just for the project, right? You have it for the business. What do you want on a larger scale as a business? This is my schedule management plan. These are my schedule requirements. This is the way that I do cost. Because maybe you might be reading something from the client that you feel, oh, actually I do it differently and it's better. So let me highlight that part. So, and I think the only way is the only way that the industry can evolve and our discipline can evolve. It's like that. And I do recall when I was involved in a major project in London back in 2016, where I actually saw for the first time the full requirements in a project control plan, every single detail, even project codes, activity codes, resource library, everything detailed. And when I saw that, I actually felt, okay, this is possible. And even though the project was still delayed, I knew everyone knew the reasons why, because the change was done in a specific way. You were inputting it prospectively, not retrospectively. So you were inputting on a specific WBS with a specific activity ID that would highlight the period because it was a requirement. You will submit a PDF printout of the change through filtering the activity codes because you will need to code every single change component in the program. The same for the cost, the same for the QSRAs. It was clear and it was in the contract. And I actually saw that for the first time. And when I compare that with every other client that I've been facing recently, not every other, but the major clients, you keep seeing nothing. There is nothing or very limited. Just that does not work, definitely. So yeah, for the contractor, that should be already part of the business strategy. That should be part of your nature, the way that you deliver, and therefore your price should reflect that, the qualitative part. Okay, you should be proud that I'm the best doing planning, scheduling, cost control, risk. You should be proud of that. That should be part of your the PCP or even the business management plan. And again, if I was a contractor, I would love to see all my portfolio live, right? So I should have project codes, activity codes in my Primavera P6 on the cloud, and then extract that from the SQL database directly for the ERP and have my financials live. That's what I want. I have seen it happening. Again, it was not a contractor, it was an energy company doing that. So why the contractors don't do the same? It's there, it's possible. Um, so yeah, I think the contractor also needs to have that, not only to submit on the proposal, but also then to provide the supply chain with the same. I think everyone around should follow the rules. And again, that's the arguable. That's the only way that I see the industry to start evolving. Otherwise, I don't see any changes actually. Unfortunately.
And I fully agree with you, like looking at it this way. So, for a proposal to make sure that it's achievable, if you document this is how I'm going to do this is how I'm going to go through the planning process, this is how I'm going to do the costing. So, it gives the confidence even to the owner that, oh, they know what they're doing, right? But the problem is, many companies don't even have well established processes and procedures. And I think that's why I really like the fact that you said it shouldn't be really that project specific. When you have it as a business strategy, you can include it in every proposal. But the problem is many don't have that as a basic requirement, right? So what is your advice for companies that still are developing their processes and procedures? They don't have well-established processes and procedures to include that as part of their proposal or contract? Would it be even their starting point to make them obligated to adhere to those processes and procedures that they document as part of the PCP in the contract or in the proposal? Or they have to first develop their processes and procedures and then make sure they include that in the PCP? What are your thoughts on that, Joel?
I think it needs to go hand in hand, right? I think it's really hard to transform a business and to really develop all the processes in 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks. So I'm recently involved in one of those engagements where we are basically developing everything from scratch, and it's already a full year, and we are probably at 70% of covering all the disciplines and all the requirements with constant and regular workshops and bringing the different people from the different departments. So it takes time and it needs to go hand in hand, but I think quick wins should be the way. If you can invest time on the schedule management plan, for example, which is part of the PCP, start drafting that, start developing the cost control plan, start connecting it, and then keep going to the next. So step by step, not in isolation. I think obviously there are experts doing that. Business processes, project processes from scratch. They are used to it. If you don't have experience, I would recommend to jump into AAC. PMI has some good content as well, APM, but you will probably need to go through a larger documents to find what you need. So yeah, I would go to AAC and check some of the RPs to start developing that organically. I don't think if you try to do everything at the same time will be possible. And another example is as you are drafting that, or another thought, as you are drafting that specifically the schedule management plan, you cannot draft that in isolation. It's not a text. It's not just text. You need to have workflows. You need to think, what about my systems and tools, right? Am I using Office 365 project online? I'm going to P6 CPPM or Ask the Power project. What are my systems? And how the systems work? How can I extract the data from there? Do I need to save the standalone file on a SharePoint folder, or I will keep it on somewhere else? So that component is also important. So this is not just drafting a document. This is exploring the tools, the systems, and aligning that according, obviously, to the end goal. You need to have a full vision of what you want to achieve. Obviously, for a project specific, it's easy. It can be done faster. Will not obviously have the business benefits, but on the long run, maybe starting with a project can be a good solution, and then start to extrapolate that to the portfolio. But yeah, the things, it's on a case by case basis. The things will not happen immediately, so you need to grow organically and expanding throughout all disciplines. And maybe obviously what you will find down the line is maybe you need to adjust specific things so the files are actually live documents, because this is another problem. I think when you think about our business and company systems, KMS and so on, you feel like they are static documents, but it cannot be static. The process evolves, the sort of projects are different, the systems and tools evolve. Again, AI comes into the table. You need to start maybe adjusting your data warehouse, the way that you collect data, the way that you save. You need to start adding, for example, data engineering processes in. So it's not a piece of paper saved in somewhere in the SharePoint. No, it's organic and needs to evolve as you go. So I don't think that actually there is an end for the project control plan. Maybe you will have a version, but this version will evolve.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Yeah, I fully agree. Very well said. I'm very happy we are having this discussion now and shedding more light on the importance of PCP, and also included as part of the contract in our proposal. So the bottom line is we have to document the PCP and put it as part of the contract and proposal. How we are doing it, and it just, yeah, depends on how well established our processes and procedures are, but it really serves us a big deal by doing that. So that's the bottom line. We hope everyone get this message from today's discussion. I have a question here. I mean, a question by the audience. I would like to ask that question and then go for any final comments. I know we are a bit over time, but it was really great discussion, Joel. So we have a question here. I highlight that here by Bo. And the question is about the contract. So should the contract be generic or specific? Because most contractors, for example, would tell, oh, sorry, it's not stated in our contract, so it's not part of our scope. So What are your thoughts on that in terms of the details of the contract? We kind of covered that up a bit, but what do you think about this question?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I do feel that we actually covered that already. But um, uh, as the question states in the end, the VO, the variation order, it's also a solution, right? If you as an owner, and if you don't have the things ready, but you feel that throughout the journey you want something, I think it's fair enough to actually ask that, to request that, but be aware that should be a variation order. But yeah, ideally at the contract stage, tender stage, you should be specific as much as you can at that stage. If not, you need to be ready. You need to have a contingency to cover with variation orders, which is absolutely fine. I've been there. A client asking for 4D planning, it's a good example. And obviously there was no budget for that, nor from the licensing perspective, not for a 3D modeler, for example. So it was a variation order, and I think it's fair. I think we also need to start using the common sense in the construction industry, which is somehow missing. So yeah.
Very good. So, Joel, any final thoughts or comments, any action step for the audience before we adjourn this session?
No, I think it told. I mean, it was great sharing some thoughts. I think this is actually more important than people and project controls professionals might think. But I think the topic is out there. The documents and the content is out there in the different professional bodies. I would suggest go to your contracts, go to previous contracts, and check, see what's the content. Maybe even start comparing the different requirements in several contracts and take your conclusions. Open the RP from AAC, check uh, what should be here, what was not added, and keep promoting that. In the end of the day, it's for our benefit. As I mentioned, I'm actually tired of paying from my own pocket as a taxpayer for the whole delays in the construction industry. And it's up to us to really transform that. But again, I think there is a huge educational component here that needs to start. And yeah, whenever you talk with an owner, you as a contractor or as a project controls engineer, please try to speak with your commercial team. Can I include something in the contract? Can I attach something I want actually to deploy this tool or this monitoring process? Go for it and really start testing it and pushing it out. I think it's the only way. And I think if there is any successful stories, it would be great to hear from you guys in the end of the day. So reach out on LinkedIn, either to me or to Shuri, and it will be great to hear like good stories about implementing a project controls plan and actually, getting a benefit out of it. Yeah.
Fantastic. That was really an insightful session, Joel. Thank you so much for shedding more light on the importance of the project control plan and, most importantly, inclusion of it in our contracts and proposals. That was really important discussion, and I'm very happy that we opened that up a bit today. As a final call to action, I also encourage everyone to check those 3 blog posts link that we posted in here. Each one of them provide you more information on project control plan, what it is, major components of it, and how you can successfully implement PCP in your project. So if you are serious about this discussion and you want to see some improvement in your projects, that's a starting point to go educate yourself and see what you can include in your contracts and proposals. But thank you very much, Joel. I really appreciate your time, sharing your insights based on your experience in projects and really the importance of PCP for all of us in project controls to know. Thank you again. I appreciate you.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks.
It was a pleasure.
And a big shout out to everyone who joined us live today. I hope you walk away with some great insights that you can implement in your projects. Thank you, everyone. Until 2 weeks from now, with another insightful presentation, with another great expert. So I hope you are having a great day. Thanks, everyone. Bye for now.